The NFL needs a hero. Who can stop Patrick Mahomes? We're going to talk about that on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to a Thursday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tyler Rowland, local expert for Locked On Titans, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy, local expert for Locked On Cardinals. Today's edition of Locked On NFL is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We're going to be talking about superheroes and villains on today's show. We're just a few weeks away from NFL training camps kicking off, so I want to have some fun during the summer while we can. We're going to tell you who some of the NFL's favorite superheroes are, who can take down some of these villains. We'll talk about who the villains are as well. Pat Mahomes at the top of that list now after a heel turn due to winning. And we'll also talk about the next generation of superheroes for the NFL. Alex, starting off here with some of the heroes. Look, I just want to say this. I know a lot of people will look at Patrick Mahomes as the NFL's number one superhero, but we wanted to do this a little bit differently. We're looking at fan favorites who maybe people are hoping can unseat Patrick Mahomes. And when we look at the villains, we'll be looking at some players who maybe aren't the most, they're good players, but they aren't the most well-liked players in the NFL. So that's the way that we're kind of approaching this. And to me, Alex, I got to start with the NFL's number one superhero who we need to take down Patrick Mahomes, and that's Josh Allen. I mean, he's been trying. Josh Allen is the sad superhero. Keeps going after the ultimate villain and just cannot take them down. So I feel like although some people don't like Josh Allen is certainly one of those superheroes in the NFL, one of those underdog guys who everyone's rooting for to kind of take that next step. And I know that we've talked about Buffalo's up and down nature as a team and how they may be on the way down, but their fans are great. And I feel like a lot of people like Josh Allen, and he obviously has superhuman talent. So can't pick Pat Mahomes. He's turned into a villain here. I think Josh Allen is a number one superhero to kind of try to take down Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at, across the landscape of superhuman talent that who people love watching, people love, it's popcorn TV. I kind of went a different approach. I mean, there are two names for me on the offensive side of the ball who are bona fide superheroes, and it's Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill. Like, those guys are bona fide dictionary definition. You are a human being and should not be able to do what you do so well with such consistency when opposing defenses are scheming just for you.
Right.
And you're able to do what you do. Now, with Josh Allen, like, I know we're going to give our own list. I'm done with Josh Allen. Like, a superhero isn't an underdog. A superhero is supposed to supersede. And yes, he did his job with 13 seconds left on the clock a couple years ago in the playoffs.
Right.
Okay, he did his job. I would more gear the superhero to be Lamar Jackson, where he's done it. Lamar
he's
Jackson,
on my list.
Absolute, no doubt about it. Not just a popcorn guy to watch, but he makes difficult things look effortless, like a superhero would. And those are three guys on the offense. Those are my three guys. It's Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, and Tyreek Hill. And I have two guys on the defensive side of the ball that we'll get to here in a minute.
Well, I actually have most of those guys on my list. The only guy I didn't have was Tyreek Hill. And looking back on it now, I'd probably change it because that's more of a superhuman trait. But I had Justin Jefferson. And he's a guy in Minnesota who had Kirk Cousins as his quarterback who's critically underrated. But at the same time, Kirk Cousins isn't one of these elite quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow, which I'll mention in a second. But I put Justin Jefferson on this list. I do have Christian McCaffrey and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is one of those guys where obviously there are a lot of people out there who dislike Lamar Jackson or take the opportunity to hate on Lamar Jackson whenever they can. But who is more of America's hero than Lamar Jackson, man? I mean, there's something about it where he can rally people behind him. People want him to succeed. People want Lamar Jackson to take that next step. People want him to be the guy to dethrone Patrick Mahomes. And obviously, he's got like one of the most gifted quarterback skill sets that we've ever seen. So Lamar was absolutely on my list. CMC, Justin Jefferson. I would absolutely put Tyreek Hill in there. If we talked about it pre-hand and tried to come up with a top 5, I would let Justin Jefferson out. But I got to put in Joe Burrow, because Joe Burrow is the only guy who's kind of slayed the dragon before. He did take down Pat Mahomes on his way to a Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, but there are different ways to be a superhero. And I know this isn't great because immediately people are going to say, well, the injuries, you can't be that. But Josh Allen and Joe Burrow are kind of like, Josh Allen's like Captain America. Like you could see him chugging a beer in the stands, and like he's kind of an everyman playing.
Everyman.
Burrow is too cool to be that. Joe Burrow's kind of got the Iron Man vibe to him, where he's too cool for school. He's elegant. He's sophisticated. All of this. He's Joe Cool at the end of the day. So I had to throw Joe Burrow in there with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Again, Patrick Mahomes, some people could look at him as a superhero. He's a villain now at the top of the mountain. If there's a quarterback that's going to be able to take him down, one of our heroes, it's got to be Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and I mean, there's one defensive guy that consistent as gravity, super boring, and super the best is Myles Garrett, where it's just like every year.
Right.
Doesn't matter. We would have had Aaron Donald on this list if he was still playing,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
And I do think, and I know that, the future superheroes, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing what our third segment's going to be. I'm going to mention this guy now for a second, but I think he's more leading the charge in the last group is Micah Parsons. Like, he's not yet, but he could be looked at as a defensive player like we've never seen before. If he's as fast from that second level, hitting quarterbacks in coverage and everything in between, we're starting to see the Fred Warner-y kind of now, but Micah Parsons could be Fred Warner times a million. And I think that's still a couple years down the road potentially, but we talked about him as being MVP, like dark horse candidate going into last season. Obviously didn't come to fruition, but I think Micah Parsons should get a mention, but he'll get more of a mention in the third segment.
You know what's funny, Alex, is two of the guys you mentioned there are on my villains list.
Of course.
And I'll explain why. We're going to get into it. Before we do, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, it's summertime. We're having some fun. You want to have some fun this summer. It's time to go to an MLB game. It's the perfect time to do it. Get you a flat beer and a cold hot dog and enjoy America's pastime. All right, and the best place to buy those tickets is on Game Time. Game Time has the best features, killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You get a view from your seat. They have the Game Time guarantee, so you know you're getting the best price. It is the perfect time to check out Game Time. I bought football, basketball, baseball, NBA, and WNBA concert tickets all on Game Time. It's my absolute home for anything ticket buying. Make sure that you take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Alex, we are going to continue this fun edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. We talked about the superheroes in the NFL that we are hoping to take down the big baddie. But now we got to talk about some of the guys who could be considered villains around the NFL. Before we get into it, I do want to thank you again for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, NFL content all year round, always for free. With football right around the corner, now is the perfect time to stay locked in to the Locked On NFL podcast. But Alex, because I kind of gave a tease at the end there, I'm just going to roll into it. There are two quarterbacks that I know that we are going to talk about. One we've already mentioned in Pat Mahomes, and there's another quarterback that gets a lot of run on our show at the end of the day, but can only be categorized as a villain. But first, the top 3 edge rushers in the league, I have them all as villains, and for different reasons. Okay? Number 1, Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
One, you look back to some of those stories about Myles Garrett in college, the hazing, and, you don't want to go too far, but you could call it bullying. Micah Parsons is a very edgy, straightforward guy. And I think his personality can lead to a lot of people not liking him. But that is not the primary reason that I have him as a villain. The number one reason is he plays for the Dallas Cowboys. And nobody other than Cowboys fans like the Dallas Cowboys. So you have a guy who's a cantankerous personality, who kind of rubs people the wrong way in his past, who is now on the most hated NFL team in the league. That guy is a villain. He's got to be a villain. Now, I think he's an extraordinary player, but we're talking about a lot of people out there who are football fans don't like Micah Parsons simply because they've heard about his past ways and he plays for the Cowboys. So that's number one. Number two, I have Myles Garrett as a villain because he took a helmet on the field and smashed somebody in the head with it. That is villain behavior. I love Myles Garrett. He's my number one defensive player in the league. I said recently that if I could add any player to the Titans and a Titans-related conversation, that I would pick Myles Garrett to do so. But you can't take somebody's helmet and slam it off their head and be a superhero. I think Myles Garrett has to be a villain. And finally, TJ Watt. He plays for the Steelers. They have always been the down, dirty, low-end Steelers. It's kind of similar to the Micah Parsons situation. TJ Watt is a villain. He plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers as a defensive lineman who is decapitating quarterbacks all the time. Those are three villains in my opinion.
Okay, so first is Aaron Rodgers. He's number one villain. Always. Right. Always number one villain, and he wants to be. It's like, oh, poor me.
He wants to be.
Yeah, he's always. Nick Bosa's mine. So TJ Watt's a sweetheart, dude. He's a Watt. It's different. Steelers. Okay. He's not the traditional. He's not James Harrison villain. James Harrison would be a villain for Pittsburgh. Okay.
Right.
It's different. Like where you cast fear into people's brains.
Hines Ward would have been a villain.
Yeah, for sure, and rightfully so, and fantastic. Both of them Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
Nick Bosa does it with a smile, and that's villainous. Okay.
Yes.
He does it with a smile, and that's villainous. And when you look at like Aaron Rodgers, obviously that's number one, always will, and will always be. But one for me, though, another name that's discussed a lot on this show is Trevor Lawrence. And let me explain why. Okay, not directly correlative to Patrick Mahomes or really anything else other than his superpower is having people erase their memory on what he's done in the NFL and people still believing that he's a top 5 or top 10 quarterback. It's like that is a superpower in villainous territory. It's like, you know what, guys, don't worry.
Deceiving people.
Coming. It's always been here. I've been a great quarterback. What are you talking about? When he's been nothing short of just maybe a hair above average since coming into the league, which just fascinates me with his ability to be a villain and just erase people's brains and their memory. Saying, you know what, guys, I'm great. Watch.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I understand. He's like pulling the wool over people's eyes. You know what I mean? Putting the bag over their head. Trevor Lawrence is like a mafia boss or something. But no, I understand that. And hey, Jacksonville is a dangerous place. So a villain in his home territory, that absolutely makes sense. I want to go back to the Nick Bosa one. And I just want to mention this. Some of his views on things have led him to being a bit of a villain in some people's eyes as well. So that is an absolute excellent one. Can I add in Jim Harbaugh? All right. Oh. Harbaugh is kind of a do it my way. You know, I do it the best way. Everything runs through me. He's like, you know, he'll just lie about certain things to hype up his guys and people he believes in. I just think that Jim Harbaugh and the Harbaugh brothers could be like evil twins. You know what I mean? Terrorizing the league. So I wanted to throw them in there. But of course, we do got to mention Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes has turned heel at this point. And I think that Patrick Mahomes has gone past the point of where he's like a lovable winner to now he's won so much that people really don't like him. And you mentioned this when we were planning the show out, Alex, or our preliminary discussion. But there's a line from my favorite movie of all time, The Dark Knight. And it says, and when it happened, I didn't quite realize how great that line is, but I think it was David S. Goyer who wrote that script or had a big hand in it. I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff. So Alex is just rolling his eyes right now that I'm talking about Hollywood talent in the middle of the show. But the line is, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. And that is so true in so many walks of life. Like, it's absolutely unreal how true that line is. And that's where Patrick Mahomes is right now. He has lived long enough to see himself become a villain, because early he was a hero. He's Super Bowl MVP. He's winning everything. He's throwing 5,000 yards. He's doing these jump passes. Now, anytime somebody makes a good pass, somebody tweets, if this was Patrick Mahomes, they talk about it for 10 weeks. Blah, 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 blah. I hate his brother. I hate his sister. I'm tired of Pat Mahomes winning. Blah, 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 this and that. Pat Mahomes has won so much that he's become a villain in the NFL, and everybody wants him to lose now.
Wrong. Wrong.
Tell me why
the
I'm
line
wrong.
was. I think the line was, you die a hero, you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. ... Unless you're Patrick Mahomes or Steph Curry. I think that was the end of that line in Dark Knight. It didn't make any sense at the time. I don't know why they'd say that in that Christopher Nolan movie, but that's the comparison between the two of those guys never rings more true than when they are so unassumingly incredible. They make it look easy. He's not. Patrick Mahomes has every reason on the planet to be a complete D-bag. He has every reason. Look at his brother. Look at his wife. Look at who his star, tight end is dating. Like, he has the opportunity to be a total jerk all the time. And all he is, taught by his father, who hasn't done so many great things since leaving baseball with all of his DUIs and everything. And that's another reason, like, him and Steph Curry, the correlative between the two is because they're family guys. Yep. They're so great at what they do. They work incredibly hard. Their teammates love them. Their coaches love them. And they're just one percenters in their sport. And that's something that is so frustrating for people who don't have that, regardless of how hard they work.
Right.
And that's the true superpower. That's why I don't think a villain, you'll ever see Patrick Mahomes as a villain. Tom Brady had a Deflategate. He had Giselle. Yep. He had all these things. And, it was Bill Belichick, and it was boring, and nobody made any money in New England, and the rain and the weather sucks, and it's the Patriots and all that stuff. He doesn't have any of that. He has one of the best fan bases in football.
Squeaky clean.
He does it with a smile. He does it completely differently than anybody we've ever seen, and he wins. I don't know how that could ever be a villain. The way he does it, not the winning, the way he does it, I think is something that will never get old. And that's the only way you can count it to Steph Curry. It's like, that's never going to get old. I'd watch that for another 30 years.
It's a great comparison because they both kind of revolutionized the way people want to play the game. Patrick Mahomes is off-schedule playmaking and, everything that he does, and Steph Curry with the three-point shooting, of course. They both felt like they brought in a new era of their sport when they came in. So they are very comparable in that way. I would be remiss if I didn't mention one more villain before we go, and it's not a coach, and it's not a player. It's Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell, the commissioner, is the biggest villain of them all. And, getting booed every time he comes out in the draft, getting rid of a certain podcast that was very popular in the NFL environment recently. The NFL and Roger Goodell are the biggest villains of all. But with that being said, let's talk about some young heroes. And if you're a comic book guy like me, we're not going to talk about the Avengers. We're talking about the young Avengers. Who are the next set of heroes in the NFL? We'll discuss that next.
Dude, Tyler, this is one of the best ones we've done.
Yeah.
We always like to get creative here on Locked On NFL Thursday. We always like, especially with, nothing happening. This season just took a break this year, it seems like. Literally. We went from the draft, free agency, draft, schedule release, nothing. And now, 19th, we're, 8 days away from camp for some teams. So we wanted to add a little fun into your week. Thanks for making Locked On NFL your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Tyler Rowland, Locked On Titans, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. We are Locked On NFL Thursday. So, Tyler, this is your show. You're the comic book guy. You're the Marvel, DC, whatever it is guy. I like Christopher Nolan, Batman's, but that's about it. The Young Avengers. Explain to people what that means, and then I'm going to take the reins and give my names first.
Okay, so the reality here is the Young Avengers is like a collection of younger heroes. A lot of nepotism in the Young Avengers with people's kids. And, you got Wiccan, and from, Scarlet Witch, and then, Thor's kid now, especially in the movies, they're really kicking the nepotism up. Ironheart, another one. We're off the rails entirely, young Hulk's son. It's just all the superheroes' kids. A lot of nepotism going around in the real world, in the superhero world. That's obvious. But really what we're looking for is younger players, probably in their first couple of years, who are going to be the net. We talked about Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, CMC, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Lamar, who are going to be the next those guys. All right. And for me, out of the gate, we have to start with the number one guy on the list, and it's got to be CJ Stroud. There is no young quarterback in the NFL right now who deserves more hype than CJ Stroud. And look, we have seen throughout NFL history, guys have a great year, a great start, and it's hard to keep it going. It's hard to do that again. But I just have faith in CJ Stroud's talent that I think he's going to be around and be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for quite some time. So if we're going to do a young Avengers list for the NFL, you can't start anywhere else but CJ Stroud.
I think you can. CJ Stroud played one of the easiest schedules that we've seen last year. One of the easiest schedules. AFC South was bad. I mean, for the most part, really 50-50 kind of. They played a lot of bad teams. Yes, they scored a whole lot of points against Joe Flacco. I think there were 9 pick sixes by Houston that game. It was pretty weighted heavily towards the defense. Obviously, he had a great game. Nico Collins, all that stuff. I get all that. Mm-hmm. I've never done this on this show, but I'm going to do it now. The one leading the charge is Brock Purdy. Like, I don't know at what point does he not deserve his flowers? CJ Stroud ain't done jack yet. And yes, you and I were like, why is he not going number 1 overall? What are we doing here, guys?
Right.
There's no question that he's the best young quarterback coming out. What more do you need to see? But I'll tell you, to win one game right now, I'm still taking Brock Purdy. With that system, with Kyle Shanahan over CJ Stroud, I'm taking Brock Purdy because he's done it. He's made Super Bowls. He's made deep playoff runs. CJ Stroud hasn't done that yet. If we see that next year, and if we're talking about for the next 7 or 8 years, who's to say that Brock Purdy won't win more games than CJ Stroud? All he's done is won. So, yes, it's the system. And, yes, it's all those things. And, yes, they've got all the talent. And things are probably going to change after this season when Brock Purdy's going to have to get paid. But going into 2024, which is going to be the barometer for the future, I'm still picking Brock Purdy over CJ Stroud, even though he's more talented and all those things. And Houston's got something cooking down there.
You know what my big problem is with Brock Purdy at the end of the day? If you switch CJ Stroud and Brock Purdy, I think the 49ers win the Super Bowl, and I think the Texans miss the playoffs. But like that is my big issue with Brock Purdy I don't know if that's right. I could be wrong about that. I could be undervaluing Brock Purdy's talent completely, but I just think that everybody thinks he's such a product of the Kyle Shanahan system that it's hard to give him the credit he deserves based on what he's done on the field. Based on what he's actually accomplished on the field, he deserves way more credit than he gets. But I can't shake that thought in my mind of, well, if you flip the quarterbacks, one team would be way worse and one team would be better. So I got to go with Stroud. But based on what's actually happening on the field, and he's going to be with Kyle Shanahan for the next foreseeable future. Mm-hmm. So you can't say that because that's not reality. But I get what you're saying there. Those two guys deserve their credit. Moving away from quarterbacks, though, Bijan Robinson has to be in there. Bijan Robinson has to be in there. I mean, I think he's the best young running back in the league. I think Arthur Smith criminally underutilized him. And I think that now that people realize, oh, maybe we should try to get this guy on the field and give him the ball as much as possible, he's probably going to go absolutely insane because just the flashes that we've seen from Bijan Robinson so far have been insane. I think that overhead camera view of him on that touchdown run where it's like kind of shaky.
Basketball move.
Sure, that is one of the coolest videos I'd ever seen in my life when I saw that video. Like, Bijan Robinson is a superhero if we're calling NFL players superheroes. So Bijan Robinson is in there. And on defense, I got to go Will Anderson from the Texans. He just is great. Great young edge rusher, can do it all. And I think he's going to pick up so many good tips from Danielle Hunter that it's going to make him even better. So there is one other player on my list.
Can I go?
But you know who it is.
No, I don't. Give your list then. I'll give mine after. Who is it? Finish it up.
Your guy, Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm as high on MHJ as anybody could possibly be. He's going to be one of the top 5 wide receivers in the league soon. He's absolutely on the Young Avengers team, and you get to pair him back up with CJ Stroud.
So here's the thing. You're missing one big name who is probably the best at his position with a wider gap to second place guy from any young guy in any position, and it's Sauce Gardner.
Yes.
Sauce is the best corner in the NFL trajectory-wise that we have, and he's a kid.
Yeah.
He is so young. He came in and immediately was a lockdown corner. Do you know how hard? Like, we don't have lockdown corners in this league anymore, dude. Like, do you remember rookie year Marshawn Lattimore was like, oh my.
Nasty. Yeah.
They found their guy, and then he's kind of sputtered off. Sauce Gardner.
It's such a hard position to play.
He's the truth.
I would say Pat Surtain deserves some conversation in there as well.
Yeah, but I do believe Sauce Gardner has that gap behind him between 1 and 2 that any young player, even Bijan Robinson, you can call Breece Hall close enough to Bijan Robinson. You can call, there's a bunch of young running backs, especially coming out of this crop, this draft. Like, we're going to see. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a good call. I mean, I think, and I'll put Micah Parsons in as maybe the leader of the defensive side of the ball because he's been in the league a handful of years now, but he's still not at that upper echelon, but he's still that guy with that incredible, even though you called him a villain, which I can 100% see, especially with what he did at Penn State, as being that guy to usher in as the elder statesman of the younger guys moving forward. But yeah, I think Sauce Gardner is going to be a stud for a decade, and he's already shown it was immediate. The dude was immediate. He was an immediate game changer.
I think he got All-Pro as a rookie. So, how insane is that? Also, I do want to mention offensive line doesn't get a lot of pub, but we got to mention Penei Sewell. I think he deserves to. He would definitely be in this. Yeah, you got to have a Hulk out there, So that would make sense to have one of those guys in there. But with that being said, that was a fun episode of Locked On NFL. Hope you guys enjoyed. Look forward to hearing some feedback from you guys on who you think the villains, the heroes, the young heroes are. Having a little fun. Football's right around the corner, though. I'm up here in the Midwest. It has been rainy and soggy and just morose for a couple of days. I got to tell you, I don't mind because it smells like football out there. So right around the corner, folks. We'll be back with you next week. Make sure to tune into a Friday edition of Locked On NFL as well. Get subscribed. Stay subscribed. It's your team every day. I'm Tyler Rowland, host of Locked On Titans, here with my co-host, Alex Clancy, host of Locked On Cardinals. As I tell you guys every week, start your weekend early and stay safe out there.